You are. We will now do the listening test. We will now start the CD. Do not open the booklet until the CD tells you to.
IELTS listening. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1 on page 2 of your question booklet. Section 1. You will hear a student from overseas phoning the student accommodation office of a college in the UK for some information. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4 on page 2. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
College Accommodation Bureau, Darren speaking. How may I help you?
Oh, good morning. I'm starting at the college in September and I need to find some accommodation.
Right. Well, there are various options. The first one is to stay in college accommodation. That'd be a single room.
The first type of accommodation is a single room in the college, so single room has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
College Accommodation Bureau, Darren speaking. How may I help you?
Oh, good morning. I'm starting at the college in September and I need to find some accommodation.
Right. Well, there are various options. The first one is to stay in college accommodation. That'd be a single room.
How much would that cost?
Well, it depends. For a standard room, you're looking at £3,276 for the year. That's just for a room with wash basin. Or £3,834 if you want an ensuite. That's with your own small bathroom.
I see. That's more than I expected.
It does include heating. That's quite a saving because energy costs can be high, especially in winter.
Does it include meals as well?
No. All our rooms are self-catering now. There's a shared kitchen on each corridor where you can cook if you want to, or there are plenty of places to eat out on campus.
Okay, and you said that's the price for the whole year?
Well, you pay annually, but actually it's for 36 weeks. It doesn't include holidays. You have to vacate the room then.
I'd need somewhere to stay in the holidays. I can't afford to go home. The flights are too expensive.
Well, there is another option. Several families who either work at the college or have children studying here offer visiting students a room in their homes.
Oh?
We call this arrangement Home Welcome, and we've still got a few places left at the moment. You pay £150 per week, and that includes breakfast, a packed lunch and dinner, as well as heating.
Is there a contract? Do you have to stay for the whole year?
No, it's flexible.
It sounds really good, but I'm not sure. I really want to be a little more independent.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10 on page 2. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
What about finding somewhere to live off campus?
Yes, you can rent a property in town privately. You might want to rent a room in a shared house. You'd have a room of your own and share the kitchen and bathroom with other students.
What about if I don't want to share?
You can get what we call a studio. They're often quite small, but they'll have everything you need.
Right. How much would those two options cost?
Well, prices vary depending on which part of town the property's in. Generally speaking, the cheapest is around £275 a month for each student.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yes, but it can also be as high as £490, and then you'll have to pay all your other bills.
What sort of amount would I be looking at for those?
Well, last year, students were paying on average about £43 per month each for gas and electricity. This year, it'll probably be somewhere in the region of £48.
That's a lot.
Yes, they've gone up quite a bit, and on top of that, you have to pay for water, and that'll probably be around £9.
That didn't occur to me. And I guess I'd have to pay for transportation, too.
That's right. Most of these properties are quite a long way from the college.
Oh, it just gets worse and worse. What's the minimum contract on this type of accommodation?
6 months. And you have to pay a deposit. But of course, you can stay there over the holidays.
That's true.
And you'd have to provide references. They want 2 from someone in this country.
I see. But that's not a problem.
If you do choose this option, we can't find the property for you. You'd have to go through the estate agent which manages the property for the owner.
Right. Thanks. Well, I think I'd like to see what's available privately. Could you give me the estate agent details?
That is the end of Section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Section 2 on page 3. Section 2. You will hear an audio guide introducing visitors to a museum. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15 on page 3. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Welcome to the Global Museum, located at the heart of this truly multicultural city, which is home to more than 60 different nationalities. The museum has a number of exciting displays and exhibitions, and this audio guide is designed to help you make the most of your visit. Altogether, the museum has 18 different galleries, and this season sees the opening of 3 new exhibitions. We recommend that you begin your tour by visiting this season's highlights. The Heritage Clothes exhibition is located in Gallery 5 of the museum. People who live in the area have spent 2 years preparing this exhibition, which brings together some of the fascinating garments traditionally worn in their own communities. They research the history of their community's clothing traditions and the customs and rituals associated with them. Altogether, 16 countries are represented, from Ghana to Korea, from Turkey to Nepal. The photographs that accompany each display case were taken by some of the City College students who are studying design and show the clothes being modelled by the real people who wear them in the course of their everyday lives. Another highlight this season is the exhibition called Toys from the Past, which can be found in Gallery 9. This exhibition, which will appeal to people of all ages, is on tour throughout the country and will be here for 10 weeks only. The exhibits include dolls made over 100 years ago with beautiful porcelain faces and, in some cases, real hair. The collection covers the favourite toys such as wooden train sets from many different generations and provides plenty of interest for children and adults. The gigantic board games, which are laid out on the gallery floor, are one of the most popular activities in the exhibition and should not be missed. This exhibition concludes with a special display of miniature toys. These small objects are on loan from countries all over the world and in some cases measure no more than a few centimetres. There's a tiny car made from matchsticks, a toy aeroplane complete with pilot and passengers made out of seashells, and some exquisite little buildings no higher than 4 centimetres.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20 on pages 3 and 4. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
The final gallery highlight of the season is the Biscuit Gallery at number 15. Many years ago, this city was famous for its biscuits, although today the factory no longer exists. Did you know, for example, that before biscuits were packed in paper or cardboard boxes, biscuit tins were fashion items? The factory made tins, round, square, triangular, hexagonal, for a whole range of different occasions, to celebrate national events, festivals, famous faces and so on. One fascinating display deals with people's favourite biscuits. There are sweet biscuits and savoury ones, biscuits filled with jam and biscuits filled with currants, biscuits with pink, yellow and white sugar icing, or coloured sugar flowers. When the factory finally closed, it announced that people's favourite biscuit was not, as you might expect, a chocolate biscuit or one filled with jam and cream, but a plain, savoury one which was eaten with cheese. When you get to the end of the exhibition, there's an entertaining hands-on activity to fill your own biscuit tin. All the biscuits ever produced by the company are piled up on a table along with various tins. The biscuits are made out of thin pieces of wood, but the weight, colours and shapes replicate the original biscuits. Your job is to fill a tin with biscuits so that when the lid is taken off, they sit there as neatly as they did when the job was done by machine. It's not as easy as it looks. If you would like to buy a memento of your visit, there is a museum gift shop selling postcards, souvenirs and handmade pottery next to the information desk on the ground floor. And finally, if you don't want to carry your coats and bags around with you during your visit, please make use of the free lockers provided by the museum. Enjoy your visit.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3 on page 5. Section 3. You will hear a student called Paul talking to a tutor about a course he is thinking of doing. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25 on page 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Good morning. Come in. You're Paul, are you?
Yes, I spoke to you on the phone.
Yes. Have a seat. You wanted to talk to me about the archaeology course?
Yes, I've read the handbook, but I'd like to find out a few more details before I decide whether to do it.
Right, yes. What would you like to know?
Well, first of all, can I combine the archaeology course with one in anthropology?
Yes, you can combine it with any other subject apart from classical history. That's simply because there's some overlap in the lecture times for those two courses. We weren't able to coordinate them.
Okay, fine. And could you tell me about the modules?
Well, in the first semester, there are 3. All of them are compulsory. We don't offer optional modules till next year.
Right.
The first one focuses on what can be learned from specific artefacts, such as pottery and stone tools. It's called Object Matters, and it's taught by Dr. Morris.
Is that... how is the module presented? I mean, is it lectures?
We refer to the means of presentation as the learning method, and in this case it's lectures integrated with practical sessions, so it's a mixture.
What about the content? I suppose we'll be looking at different kinds of archaeological remains and how to date them and so on.
To some extent, but the module is basically about processes. First of all, recording material, then classification, then interpretation of the data. That's how archaeologists draw conclusions about their findings. And finally, display. Is that okay?
I think so. Yes, thanks. One other thing. How is the module assessed? Is there an exam?
No, it's all based on coursework.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30 on page 6. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Okay.
And the second module, that's the one called Towns and Cities, is taught by our department head, Professor Elliott. And, as the name suggests, the module's about the origins of built environments and how they developed.
That's mainly factual then, I suppose.
It is really. And for that reason, the assessment's by examination. But you may be pleased to know it's an oral rather than a written exam, and
It sounds a bit scary.
most of our students find they actually enjoy it, so don't worry too much.
Okay.
And then the title of the third module is Method and Science, and in that Dr. Thompson will be introducing you to the standard techniques used in archaeological fieldwork and analysis, things like excavating and dating.
What about the learning method for this module? Are there any lectures, or is it all laboratory work?
Oh, it's half lab work and half seminars. There aren't any lectures. Then, right at the end of the module, you'll take part in a site survey. The date for that is week beginning the 10th of March, but I can't tell you the location yet. That'll be announced later. But I think you'll find it very useful.
Yes, I know someone who went on that last...
That is the end of Section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Section 4. You will hear part of a student presentation about a conservation project on the Florida coast of the United States. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40 on page 7. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Today I'm going to be talking about the first year of a regeneration project in a mangrove forest. Mangrove forests are found along river estuaries and coastlines and are important because they prevent flooding by acting as a barrier between the land and sea. The mangrove trees have special roots which can breathe and allow them to survive in thick, airless mud. They are also a very important habitat for wading birds, fish, and other animals. In the area where the project is taking place, there have been a number of problems since the area was first settled over 100 years ago. Many of the mangrove trees were initially burnt as firewood by local farmers. The mangrove forests were also poisoned by settlers' farming methods because the farmers used fertilizer to increase crop yields, and this started to seep into the water, eventually killing part of the mangrove forest. Farming in the area wasn't successful, and what was left of the mangrove forest area wasn't valued by local people as crops couldn't be grown there. And so what happened was that the area started to be used as somewhere to dump trash. Action was urgently needed to protect the mangrove forest and prevent flooding, and so the Mangrove Regeneration Project was set up. The conservationists involved decided to construct a sand barrier around the forests. But unfortunately, this proved to be ineffective. The only way forward appeared to be to grow new mangroves from seed. Several species of mangrove inhabit the forests in this area of the United States, but it is the gray mangroves that we are concerned with here. The seed of this plant is about the size of an almond, and most seeds fall only when they are fully ripe. The Mangrove Regeneration Project first began 3 years ago. The first set of seedlings was planted in small pots and left to germinate in a hothouse. The plants thrived, and large roots appeared at the bottom of the pots. Ideally, these seedlings should have been conditioned with increasingly salty water before being planted in the sea. They had, in fact, only been watered with rainwater. As the plants weren't used to a saline environment, it was decided to plant them out on the south side of a small island nearby. It was hoped that this would allow them to get used to salt water gradually, since this part of the island was flooded every day at high tide. There were over 100 plants planted in this particular spot, and it was necessary to protect them not from the large number of wading birds which visit the area looking for food, but from the large rabbit colony living in the area. The process for the second set of seedlings was completely different. Young seedlings were collected from the forests and then taken to a new site. The seedlings were then planted in the seabed behind old mangrove roots for protection. However, this method did not prove very successful, and the vast majority of these seedlings were washed away in a storm. Luckily, the first set of seedlings survived, and this method is the one which the project will continue to use in the future. Now, I'd like to describe in more detail the process.
That is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet. You have 2 minutes left. You have 1 minute left. Please stop writing and wait for your question booklet to be collected.